Can you imagine what it would be like to carry the weight of a secret for 15 long years? And worse, to be treated as if you were the one at fault for it? I'm not talking about just any secret, but one that could have destroyed my life, my family. My children, or rather my grandchildren, were left with me as a burden, and I, with a mother's love and a grandmother's wisdom, did what had to be done. But now, after all these years, my own daughter, the woman who abandoned me and forced my hand, is suing me for kidnapping. Was what I did really wrong? Was the pain she caused me when she left, when she turned her back, less than the pain she causes me now, accusing me of something I never thought I'd hear? I looked at the judge, my daughter's eyes fixed on me, and there, in silence, a whirlwind formed inside me. The only crime I committed was loving those boys more than anything in the world. But what about her? What did she want when she tried to destroy me after all this time? I'll tell you everything, honestly and truthfully. But before you continue here, let me ask you something. Stay until the end. I'm sure you'll be surprised, because the truth has the power to transform us. And since this is a true story, I invite you to comment on the city you're watching from and subscribe to the channel to enter a giveaway at the end of the month. Who knows? You might win a special gift I've prepared with so much love. The story I'm about to share isn't just about the law, but about loyalty, love, and the choices that define our lives. I'm sure that by the end, you'll understand that the real kidnapper isn't who you think it is.
The courtroom was silent, the kind of silence that weighs down on you, that you feel deep in your soul, you know? The cold light from the lamps reflected off the table, and there I was, in the hard chair, watching my daughter, Vanessa, so well-dressed, so polished, the face of someone who had never made a mistake. She sat down and looked at me with that gaze of someone who thinks they're doing the right thing. Deep down, I knew she was there for the only reason that had always driven her. It wasn't for love for her children, no. It was for the inheritance, for the money. The weight of that envelope in my purse seemed to grow with every word she spoke. How could someone who once called me mother now treat me like a burden? How could a woman who spent her whole life raising children, sacrificing dreams to protect others, now be sitting in the defendant's chair as if I were the one who had done something wrong? I couldn't let this pass. Vanessa, with her soft and calculated speech, told the judge that I had kept her away from her children. She spoke of a love that, until that moment, no one had ever truly seen. What she didn't say was how far she had pulled away, how many days and nights I spent alone, with my grandchildren crying for a mother who couldn't even muster the courage to apologize. I gripped the envelope tightly, and with every breath, I thought of those cold nights, the sharp silence of a home empty of love, but full of resilience. I would do whatever it took to expose the truth. And the truth was right there, in that envelope. I could no longer stay silent. The judge, with his deep voice, interrupted my daughter's speech, and for the first time that day, I felt a hint of justice. He looked at me, his eyes tired like mine, and asked me to speak. What would I say? I didn't have easy words nor a prepared speech, only what was there in front of everyone. The pain of my grandchildren, the silent suffering of those left behind. But my voice didn't waver. I spoke the truth firmly, without hesitation, because deep down I knew that the truth always comes out, even if it's too late. The look of the boys behind me, now 17 years old, seemed to tell me that, in some way, they already knew that all of this was nothing but a farce. Bruno, Luca, and Mateus were there, watching, waiting, as they always did, waiting for answers.
And as always, it was me who had to give. I remember the day my daughter left her children, just 3 years old, under my care. She had asked me to look after them, but what I didn't know was that she wouldn't come back. She didn't give any explanation. She just walked away. I had no choice but to raise them as my own. I didn't hesitate. I took them in my arms and promised to be the mother they needed. I spent sleepless nights, endless days, just trying to keep everything together, trying to be both mother and grandmother to those 3 beautiful children. I look back now and I realize how much my life changed. I didn't have a choice but to be there for them, to protect them, to love them like they were my own. They were so small, so innocent, and they called me Mama when they couldn't even say Grandma yet. And in that moment, when I became their everything, I didn't care about what I had lost. It wasn't about me anymore. It was about them. I put my dreams aside to ensure they had everything they needed. But it wasn't easy. There were times I wondered if anyone would ever understand the sacrifices I made, the things I gave up, the dreams that slipped through my fingers because I had to raise them alone. I never complained, but the pain was there, quietly, beneath the surface. There were nights when I would sit in the living room, the sound of the boys playing in the background, and I would just close my eyes, hoping for a moment of peace. But then I would hear their little voices calling for me, and I knew that no matter how tired I was, I had to keep going. I did everything I could to give them a stable life, a life where they wouldn't feel abandoned. I made sure they went to school, that they had friends, that they were taken care of. I stayed up late, helping them with their homework, taking them to the doctor, giving them the love they deserved. The years went by, and I didn't think twice about it. It wasn't until later, when they started asking about their mother, that I realized just how much she had been absent from their lives. I didn't tell them the truth right away. I couldn't. They were too young, and I didn't want them to feel abandoned. But as they grew older, they started to see the truth for themselves. They started asking questions, wondering why their mother wasn't there. And that's when I realized that no matter how much I loved them, no matter how much I sacrificed for them, they would always have that emptiness in their hearts, that longing for the mother who never came back. Vanessa tried to manipulate the judge, claiming she was a loving and concerned mother. She spoke with such conviction, as if she believed her own lies. She painted a picture of a woman who had been forced to step away from her children because of the circumstances. A woman who had never stopped loving her children, just struggling to find herself. It was a perfect image, one that many people, including the judge, might have believed. But I knew the truth. The woman standing before us was not the mother she claimed to be. The woman I had known was someone who chose the easy way out, someone who ran away instead of facing the responsibility of motherhood. What she didn't say, what she didn't dare admit, was how long it had been since she had really cared for her children, how many nights she had stayed away, how many birthdays she missed, how many holidays passed without a word. It wasn't about postpartum depression or addiction or any other excuse she tried to use to justify her absence. No. It was about her own selfishness. She didn't want the children. She didn't want the responsibility. She wanted freedom. And she didn't want anything to do with the hardships of raising children. She left. And that was the truth. I sat there in the courtroom, my hands shaking as I gripped the envelope, knowing the truth that Vanessa had hidden for so long. She had left them not because of some tragic event or hardship, but because it was easier for her. And now, after all this time, she had the audacity to sit there and act as if she had been the one wronged. I wanted to stand up, shout, but I remained silent. I wasn't going to let her twist the truth anymore. She might have abandoned them, but I had been the one there for them. I had been the one who held them when they cried, when they needed love and comfort. And no matter what she said, that would never change. Alice described the pain the boys felt growing up without knowing where their mother had gone. They didn't understand why she disappeared, why she never came back to take them in her arms. I tried to protect them from the truth, from the harsh reality that their mother had abandoned them without a second thought. But I knew the day would come when they would have to face it. And that day, I feared, had arrived. I saw the confusion in their eyes, the sadness they couldn't quite express. They were young, but they were smart. They knew something was missing, but they didn't know what. They would ask about their mother, and I would tell them what little I could. "She's just taking some time to herself, baby," I would say, trying to cover for her absence. But the lies were becoming harder to tell. I couldn't keep pretending forever. Ethan, always the more perceptive one, started to ask the hard questions. "Why doesn't she come to see us, Grandma?" he asked one evening, his voice full of innocence and confusion. I couldn't answer him. I had no answers. I didn't know why she had left, and it broke my heart to see him struggle with that emptiness. No matter how much I loved them, how much I tried to be both a mother and a grandmother, there was always that one question lingering in the air. Why? Why didn't their mother come back for them? Why did I have to take on a role I never expected? They had no answers, and I had none to give. The years passed, and the boys grew. But that absence, that hole left by their mother, never truly went away. They didn't talk about it much, but I could see it in their eyes, feel it in their voices when they mentioned her. It wasn't just about having a mother. It was about knowing someone cared enough to be there. And that, I knew, was something they would never get from Vanessa. Vanessa's lawyer tried to defend her, spinning stories of postpartum depression and addiction. He spoke as if those explanations could erase the years of neglect, the pain, the abandonment. He suggested that her absence was due to an illness, that she couldn't care for her children because she was sick, that the woman who had walked away from them for so long wasn't the real Vanessa, but someone lost, struggling to find herself. But I knew the truth. I'd seen it for years. I had watched her come and go only when it was convenient for her. She showed up once when they were 8, asking for money. Then again when they were 12, staying for 3 days before disappearing once more. She had only come back for what she could take from them, from me. She wasn't looking to heal or make amends. She was looking for a way to take control of the life she had abandoned. I couldn't let the lies go on any longer. The boys were old enough now to understand that their mother's excuses didn't hold water. And I wasn't about to let her continue playing the victim, not after everything she had done. I could see the lawyer's words slipping off the judge, but they couldn't erase the truth that had been written in those photos, in the school records, in every moment I had spent raising those boys as my own. Postpartum depression? I said, my voice firm and unwavering. You don't abandon your children because you're sick. You leave when you don't care enough to try. You leave when your own desires outweigh the needs of your children. I'm not here to judge her illness, but to point out that she had a choice, and she chose to walk away. I could feel the weight of those words in the room, and I knew the boys sitting behind me were hearing them too. It wasn't about what Vanessa said or how she spun her story. It was about what the boys had lived through, what they had suffered in her absence. They were old enough to understand, to see through the facade. And the truth was something no amount of excuses could ever cover up. As Vanessa's lawyer continued to make his case, I could see the judge growing more and more skeptical of her story. He asked her pointed questions, ones she wasn't prepared to answer. She had expected him to just accept her narrative, but now, with every word, her defenses were crumbling. The judge leaned forward, his eyes sharp, and asked the question that no one had asked her before. Why did you stay away for so long? What made you come back now? Vanessa faltered. I saw the mask slip for a brief moment, the look of fear, of realization that she couldn't keep pretending any longer. She was about to speak, to offer some other explanation, but the judge wasn't interested in more excuses. He wanted the truth. That was when I decided it was time to act. I stood up slowly, my knees protesting, but my heart steady. I walked to the front of the courtroom and placed the envelope on the table. There it was, everything I had kept for 15 years. Photos, school records, permission slips, medical documents, evidence of the years I had spent raising those boys, making decisions for them, caring for them. My name appeared on every single document, and not once in all these years had Vanessa's name been listed as their mother. Your Honor, I said, my voice calm but firm, the truth is right here. These boys were never abandoned by me. They were abandoned by their mother, and I've been here for them every single day. I've been their mother, their protector, their provider. This envelope holds the proof of everything I've done for them. It's the story Vanessa never wanted anyone to know. The courtroom fell silent. I could feel the eyes of everyone in the room on me, including the boys behind me, now 17, their faces unreadable. I couldn't look at them. I didn't need to. I knew they already knew the truth. They had seen it in my actions. They had felt it in my care. And now they were seeing it in the documents that lay before the judge. Vanessa's lawyer opened his mouth to speak, but Judge Williams held up a hand, silencing him. I don't need to hear more from you. I'll examine the contents of this envelope before I make any further decisions. I slowly stood up, my body no longer obeying with the same agility as before, but the strength that moved me was greater than any pain I felt. Vanessa's eyes were fixed on me, as if she wanted to intimidate me, but I knew what I had in my hands. That envelope, with its edges worn by time, was what the truth needed to rise. The judge looked at me in silence and simply gestured for me to hand it over. My heart beat loudly in my chest, and the room seemed to freeze for a moment. I knew the weight of that envelope would be greater than any word I could say. It contained what her accusation couldn't erase, the proof of who their real mother had been. First, I took out the photos. I placed them one by one on the table, slowly. Bruno, on his first bicycle, a wide smile, his face covered in sweat and joy. Luca, the day of the soccer championship, with a gold medal hanging around his neck, eyes shining with pride. And Mateus, with a sweaty forehead and hands gripping the small trophy from the chess championship, his eyes a little sad, but with a shy smile. I knew these photos were more than just images. They were their story, a reminder of what Vanessa hadn't been there to see. I placed the photos on the table, and the judge, with an increasingly serious expression, began to analyze them. It was no longer just a discussion about custody. It was about the abandonment of 3 entire lives. With every photo, with every document, he began to understand what I had already known. Vanessa's story was full of gaps, of lies. It wasn't just the photos. There were report cards, medical records, permission slips I had signed when they traveled with the school, all documented, like a testimony of every step I had taken for them. I watched Vanessa's face twist, her hands starting to tremble slightly. She tried to maintain her composure, but she couldn't deny the reality that the boys she had abandoned were now growing up before everyone, and the only thing she had to offer was a fake smile. "What do you have to say about this, Vanessa?" asked the judge, his voice calm, but with a weight of decision that was almost palpable. There was no response from Vanessa, and deep down I knew there wouldn't be. She had no more words. The truth, the one she never wanted to face, was there, exposed before everyone, and I already knew that deep down that would be enough. I stood there, watching Vanessa, her composure slipping, her face pale. She was a stranger to me now, someone I barely recognized. The woman who once called me mom was now the one who had abandoned her own children. And there, in front of the judge, in front of everyone, she couldn't deny it anymore. The truth was in the envelope. It was in the photographs, in the documents, in the years of dedication I had given to those boys. Vanessa shifted uncomfortably, trying to compose herself, but it was clear she didn't have the strength to defend her lies anymore. She had been the one who chose to leave. She had been the one who chose to walk away when things got tough. And now she was trying to come back as if nothing had happened, as if 15 years of abandonment could be erased with a few well-chosen words. "You've been absent from their lives for 15 years, Vanessa," I said quietly, my voice steady. "And now suddenly you want to play the role of the loving mother? But you weren't there when they cried for you. You weren't there when they asked why you weren't home. You weren't there for any of it." Her eyes narrowed, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. The truth was too heavy, and she knew it. She had no excuse for what she had done. No explanation could cover up the years she had spent running away from her responsibilities. Your Honor, these children were abandoned, I continued, feeling the weight of the words as they left my mouth. And I've been here for them every day. I've been their mother in every sense of the word. And now, after all this time, she wants to take them from me. She wants to tear them away from the only family they've known. I could see the judge's face soften, the weight of the truth settling in. The courtroom was quiet, all eyes on us. It wasn't just about custody anymore. It was about something deeper. The responsibility of being a mother, of being there for your children no matter what. And Vanessa hadn't been there. She tried to speak again, but her words faltered. She was losing. She knew it. And deep down, I knew that this would be the last time she would try to tear apart the family I had fought so hard to build.
Vanessa tried to play on the judge's emotions, using guilt, but it wasn't working. She wasn't convincing anyone, least of all me. She spoke of a future she was promising the boys, of a life full of stability and opportunities, as if she could erase 15 years of absence with a few words. She talked about giving them a better life, about offering them things I never could, but none of that mattered, because in the end, love can't be measured by material things. It's about presence. It's about showing up when it matters. And Vanessa hadn't shown up. I sat there, calm, steady, knowing that I had done everything in my power for those boys. I had given them my love, my time, my sacrifices. I had been the one to kiss their foreheads when they were sick, to hold their hands when they were afraid. I had been their constant, their protector, and their guide. The judge listened carefully to Vanessa's lawyer, but I could see that he was starting to grow skeptical. It wasn't just about the words they were speaking. It was about the truth that had already been laid out in front of him. It was about the undeniable reality of what had happened. "You're telling me that you want custody of them now," the judge said to Vanessa, his voice measured. "But where have you been for the last 15 years? Where were you when they needed you the most?" Vanessa faltered, her eyes darting to the floor. She couldn't answer him because there was no answer. She had no excuse. I turned to face the judge, my voice firm. "Your Honor, these children are not pawns in a game. They are not here to be handed over to whoever offers them the most. They are here because they deserve to be with someone who loves them, who has always been there for them. And that someone is me." The judge nodded slowly, clearly considering everything that had been said. Vanessa's lawyer attempted to speak again, but the judge held up his hand, silencing him. "I've heard enough," Judge Williams said. "I will make my decision based on the evidence presented, and I will take into consideration the years of care and dedication that Mrs. Mitchell has shown these children." The judge asked for the boys to speak, and I felt a knot tighten in my chest. This was the moment that would define everything. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about them, about what they wanted, what they needed. The truth was no longer mine to tell alone. It was theirs, and they had the right to voice it. Ethan, as always, was the first to speak. He cleared his throat and stood up, his posture straight, but his eyes betraying the uncertainty he felt. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady, but carrying the weight of years of pain. "I don't know what to say. I don't really know her, not the way I know Grandma. She's
She's a stranger to me. I felt a wave of emotion rush over me, but I kept it contained. I had raised him. I had been there for him every step of the way. And now, in front of everyone, he was making it clear he didn't know his mother, not really. Lucas followed, his voice softer, but no less firm. I don't remember her. I don't know who she is, and I don't think I want to know. Grandma has been our mother, our protector. She's the one who's always been there for us. I looked over at Noah, and for the first time, I saw the weight of everything he had been holding in his eyes. He was quiet, as always, but when he spoke, it was with a calm certainty that cut through the room. I don't want to live with her, he said simply. I don't think I ever did. I held my breath. I had known they would say something like this, but hearing it, seeing their faces as they spoke, it made the reality of it hit home. They had made their choice, and it wasn't for the woman who had walked away from them all those years ago. It was for the woman who had been there, day in and day out, loving them unconditionally. The judge looked at me, then at the boys, and nodded slowly. He understood. The decision wasn't about the past. It was about what the boys needed now. It was about the love they had always known, and the love that had never failed them. I believe I have enough information to make a decision, the judge said quietly. I'll take everything into consideration. Vanessa, unable to accept the truth of the situation, tried one last attempt to win over the boys. She leaned forward, her voice soft, pleading almost. I know I've made mistakes, she said, looking at each of them in turn. But I want to make it right. I can give you a better life, a life with stability, with everything you've always wanted. She spoke of material things, of big houses, vacations, luxuries. She painted a picture of a life where they would have everything they ever needed, things I couldn't offer. But I knew, and so did they, that these were empty promises. Money couldn't replace the years she had lost, the love she had never given. We don't need those things, Lucas said quietly, his voice steady and resolute. We've always had enough. What we needed was you, and you weren't there. I could see Vanessa's eyes narrow, her frustration building. She tried again. But I can give you a future. I can give you everything you've missed. Bruno, who had been quiet up until then, spoke. His voice was calm, but there was a sharpness to it that I hadn't heard before. It's not about money. It's not about things. It's about being there when it matters. You weren't there. Grandma was. And she's the one who made sure we had everything, even if we didn't have a lot. Vanessa opened her mouth to speak, but no words came. She couldn't argue with that. She couldn't argue with the truth that was staring her in the face, the truth that she had abandoned her children, and now, after all these years, was trying to buy their love. I'm sorry, Noah said, his voice soft but final. But we don't want to go with you. We want to stay with Grandma. And just like that, the proposal was rejected. The decision had been made, and it wasn't because of money or promises or anything Vanessa could offer. It was because, in the end, love and presence were the things that mattered most. After the defeat in court, Vanessa tried once more to reach out to the boys, now teenagers. I saw it in her eyes, but desperation to reconnect, to gain control, to fix what she had broken. But I also saw through her. She wasn't trying to be a mother. She was trying to win back what she thought she had lost. She came to the house one afternoon, knocking on the door with a smile that was all too familiar. It was the same smile she had used to manipulate people to get what she wanted. "Can we talk?" she asked when I opened the door, her voice soft but determined. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there looking at her. She was wearing the same coat she had worn when she left, and for a moment it felt like no time had passed. But I knew better. I knew that everything had changed and nothing could go back to the way it was. She stepped inside, her eyes scanning the room, the place that had become home to the boys, the place where they had found the love and stability they needed, the place where she had never been. "I've been thinking," she said, her voice shaking slightly. "Maybe I was wrong. Maybe I shouldn't have left, but I want to make things right. I want to be part of your lives again." I could see the boys standing in the hallway, watching from a distance, unsure of what to do. They were old enough to understand the stakes, old enough to know that this wasn't just a simple visit. This was about something much bigger, the truth. And they were watching me, waiting for my response. I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "Vanessa," I said, my voice calm, "you can't just come back after all these years and pretend everything is fine. You left them when they needed you the most. You can't undo that. And you don't get to just waltz in and think you can be their mother now. That role was taken. It was earned. And I've been the one here for them every step of the way." She opened her mouth to protest, but I raised my hand, stopping her. "I'm not here to argue with you. I'm here to protect these boys, and that's what I've done from the very beginning." Vanessa's face tightened, and for a moment I saw the fear in her eyes, the fear of losing everything. But it was too late. She had already lost them, and now they had a chance to choose the family they wanted, and that family wasn't her. I sat down with the boys later that evening, the air thick with the weight of everything that had happened. They had been quiet after Vanessa's visit, unsure of what to make of it all. I knew they were confused, perhaps even hopeful for a moment. But I also knew that deep down they could see what I had seen all along. "Grandma, why did she come back?" Lucas asked quietly, his voice soft but full of that analytical mind of his. He had always been the most perceptive of the three, and I knew he wasn't just asking about Vanessa's visit. He was asking about the bigger picture. "I'll tell you," I said, my voice steady, "but I need you to understand something. This is not about you. This is about what she wants, not what you need." I paused, taking a breath before continuing. "Vanessa didn't come back because she realized she made a mistake. She didn't come back because she suddenly remembered how much she loved you. No, she came back because she wants what she can get from you. She wants the inheritance. That's all this has ever been about for her, the money." The boys looked at each other, a flicker of recognition passing between them. They had started to understand even before I said the words out loud. They had seen the signs, heard the whispers of the life she had built since leaving them behind. The life of luxury, the new relationships, the things that had replaced them in her heart. She filed paperwork to have me declared an unfit guardian, I continued, my voice calm but filled with the pain of betrayal. She waited until now, until you were about to turn 18, to serve me with custody papers. Why? Because once she regained custody, she would get access to the insurance money. That's what this is really about. Not about you, not about being a mother. It's about the money she thought she could take from you. Ethan's face darkened, and I saw the anger rise in his eyes. He had always been the quiet one, the one who held his emotions inside, but I could see it now, the realization that the woman who was supposed to be his mother had only ever cared for herself. No, Noah said quietly, breaking the silence. She never wanted us back. She just wanted the money. I nodded, unable to say anything else. The truth was out. The reality of who Vanessa was had been laid bare. And the boys, now almost men, had the chance to make their own decisions. They could see who really cared for them, who really loved them. It wasn't their mother. It was me.
Vanessa, never one to back down easily, came at me again, this time with a more desperate approach. After everything that had been laid out in the courtroom, after the boys had made their choice, she knew she had to try something else. She called me one afternoon, her voice calm, but with an edge that wasn't there before. "I'm willing to let it go," she said. "The inheritance, the custody battle, everything, if you just give me a chance to be their mother again. You've won, Alice, but I'm asking you, as their mother, to give me another shot." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment I found myself frozen, unsure of how to respond. She sounded so sincere, so willing to do whatever it took. But I knew better. This wasn't about redemption. This wasn't about making things right. This was about one final attempt to get what she thought was hers. The money, the power, the control. I closed my eyes for a moment, taking a deep breath. This wasn't just about what Vanessa wanted. It was about what the boys needed. And I already knew the answer. "You think you can come back after all this time and just erase everything you did?" I asked softly. "You think you can take back the years you were absent, the promises you broke? You can't. The boys don't need you, Vanessa. They have me, and they've always had me." There was a silence on the other end of the line, and for a second, I almost thought she might finally understand. But then she spoke again, her voice tinged with bitterness. "I'm willing to let it go. The inheritance, the custody battle, everything, if you just give me a chance to be their mother again. You've won, Alice, but I'm asking you, as their mother, to give me another shot. You've won this round, Alice, but don't think this is over. I'll find another way. I always do." I hung up the phone and sat back in my chair, feeling the weight of the conversation settle in. She had been defeated, but I knew this wouldn't be the last I heard from her. People like Vanessa never gave up, no matter how much they lost. They kept fighting, kept pushing, testing the boundaries to see how much they could take before the world finally said no. And I was ready for whatever came next. The days following Vanessa's call were tense.
I could feel the weight of what had just transpired hanging in the air, and the boys, though still processing everything, weren't speaking much about their mother. It wasn't that they were ignoring it, they were just deciding what it all meant, deciding where they belonged, and deciding who they wanted to be in the face of all that had happened. I could see them growing more withdrawn, especially Ethan, who had always carried the heaviest load. He was the first to break the silence that had settled over the house. "Grandma," he said one evening, his voice steady but with an edge of emotion I hadn't expected. "What happens now?" I looked at him, my heart swelling with love and pride. He had always been the one to ask the tough questions, the one who, even as a child, seemed to understand things no one else could. And now at 17, he was looking at me, waiting for an answer to a question that carried the weight of everything. "I don't know, sweetheart," I replied softly, "but I'll be here for you. Always, no matter what happens." Lucas and Noah joined us shortly after, and we all sat there in silence for a while. I could feel the tension lifting as they each processed the reality of the situation. They had a chance to make a choice that would affect the rest of their lives. After a long pause, Noah spoke. "We've been thinking about it, and we've decided." My heart skipped a beat, and I looked at each of them, waiting for the words I knew were coming, the words that would change everything. "We want to stay here," Ethan said firmly, his eyes meeting mine. "With you, Grandma. You've always been here for us. You've always been the one who loved us, not her." The words hung in the air, and I could feel the weight of them in my chest. This was it. This was the choice they had made. They had chosen me. And in that moment, I realized that no matter what happened with Vanessa, I had already won. I had won their love, their trust, their loyalty, and nothing could ever take that away. "Are you sure?" I asked, my voice thick with emotion. They nodded, every single one of them. "We're sure," Lucas said softly. "You've been our mother, Grandma, always." And just like that, everything that had been so uncertain, so up in the air, was decided. We had made it through the worst of it, and now we could finally start to heal together. As the days passed, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened. The choices Vanessa had made, the sacrifices I had made, and most of all, the role I had played in shaping the lives of these three incredible boys. Being a mother wasn't easy. It never had been. And being a grandmother who had to step into the role of mother had its own set of challenges. But I had always done what needed to be done. I had never hesitated, never second-guessed myself. I did it because I had to. I did it because they needed me. But as I looked at them now, growing into young men, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. They had turned out to be everything I had hoped they would be. They were strong, kind, and most importantly, they understood the value of family. They understood what it meant to love and sacrifice for each other. They were more than just the children I had raised. They were a part of me, and I was a part of them. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have ever given them. But still, there was a part of me that worried. Would they be okay? Would they be able to move forward without carrying the weight of the past? I knew they would be fine, but as a mother, or in my case, as both a mother and grandmother, it was hard not to worry. It was hard not to wonder what the future would hold for them, for all of us. "Grandma," Lucas said one evening as we sat around the dinner table, "do you ever wonder if we'll be okay?" His words caught me off guard, and I looked at him, searching his face for any signs of doubt. But there was none. He was just asking a question, the same way any child might. But this time, it wasn't just a child's curiosity. It was a young man's understanding of what the future could hold. "I do," I replied softly. "But I also know that no matter what happens, we'll always have each other." I smiled at them, the weight of everything finally lifting from my shoulders. They had made their choice, and in doing so, they had chosen not just me, but each other. And that was all I needed to know.
Vanessa wasn't done yet. Despite everything, despite the overwhelming evidence and the boy's clear decision, she couldn't let go. She filed more paperwork, started another round of legal battles, this time trying to tear us apart with manipulation and false claims. I knew this was coming. People like Vanessa never gave up, not when they thought there was something to gain. Her lawyer called me one afternoon, offering a settlement. "If you just agree to let her see the boys," he said, "there's no need for this to go to trial. She's willing to give up the custody fight in exchange for visitation rights." It was a tempting offer. I could see that. But there was something in his voice, something that made it clear he was trying to wear me down. He knew I was tired. He knew I had already been through so much, but he didn't know how strong I had become over the years, how many battles I had fought for these boys. "I don't want her to see them," I said firmly, my voice steady despite the frustration that churned inside me. "Not unless she's ready to be a real mother, not just someone trying to ease her conscience. The boys have made their choice. They don't want to see her." The lawyer hesitated, but I could hear him trying to find another way in. "But they deserve to have a relationship with their mother. You can't keep them from her forever." "Watch me," I said, my patience wearing thin. "I'll protect them. If she truly wanted a relationship with them, she wouldn't have abandoned them in the first place. She had 15 years to come back. She had 15 years to make things right. Now, she wants to waltz in and pretend that all of that never happened? No, that's not how this works." The call ended shortly after, but I knew this wouldn't be the last time I would hear from her lawyer. They would keep pushing. But I was ready for whatever came next. I had already fought the hardest battle, and I would keep fighting for my boys.
Vanessa didn't take my refusal well. She tried again, this time in a much more desperate manner. She reached out to me directly. No lawyers involved this time. She wanted to meet in person. "Let's talk, Alice," she said over the phone, her voice strained with emotion. "I'm ready to do whatever it takes. I made a mistake. I know I did. But please, give me a chance to make things right." I felt a pang of sadness. She had been given so many chances, and now she was begging for another? But the truth was, the damage was done. She couldn't just undo everything with a few words, no matter how convincing they seemed. And I couldn't risk letting her back into their lives, not when I knew what she was truly after. "I don't believe you, Vanessa," I replied, my voice steady but firm. "I can't just let you waltz back in after everything you've done. The boys have chosen. They don't want you in their lives. They've made their decision, and you need to respect that." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear her breathing, the silence thick with the weight of everything that had been said. "I understand," she finally whispered. "I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. I wanted them to know that I'm sorry." Her words hung in the air, and for a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. She had no idea what it meant to truly sacrifice, to give up your life for the sake of your children. She was just a woman trying to patch up the holes she had left in her wake. But it was too late. The cracks were too wide. You can't keep hurting them and expecting them to forgive you. I won't let you do that. And with that, I hung up. I knew it was the last time I would speak to her, the last time I would ever listen to her excuses. It was over. The boys were safe, and that was all that mattered. The court date was set. After everything that had happened, after Vanessa's last desperate attempt, it all came down to this: the final decision. The boys had spoken. They had made their choice. But now the law had to decide what would happen next. Vanessa's lawyer presented his case, but this time it felt different. The judge was no longer listening to the same tired excuses. He had seen the truth, laid out in the form of photographs, medical records, and the voices of the boys themselves. They had been abandoned, and they had been raised with love and care by me. There was no question anymore. There was only the reality of what Vanessa had done and the reality of what I had done. The judge turned to me, his eyes serious but understanding. "Mrs. Mitchell," he said, his voice steady, "this has been a long and difficult case. You have shown through everything presented that you have been the primary caregiver for these children. You have been their mother in every sense of the word. And while Vanessa has the right to be a part of their lives, that right does not erase the abandonment they suffered." He paused, looking down at the papers in front of him. "I hereby rule in favor of Mrs. Mitchell. Custody will remain with her. Vanessa will have supervised visitation rights, but the boys have made their wishes clear. Their well-being is paramount, and they have already chosen where they want to be." I could feel the weight of the decision settle in my chest, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace. It was over. I had fought for my family, and we had won. The boys would stay with me where they belonged. And Vanessa, despite her attempts, had been defeated. The judge turned to the boys, who were sitting quietly behind me, their faces a mix of relief and resolve. "Boys, do you have anything to say?" Ethan stood first, his voice strong and clear. "We just want to be with Grandma. She's always been there for us. She's the only mother we've ever known." Lucas and Noah nodded in agreement, and that was all that needed to be said. The judge nodded as if he had expected nothing less. The finality of it all hit me then, but it wasn't just a sense of relief. It was also the realization that despite everything, we had come out stronger. We had a future now, one where we could finally move forward without the shadows of the past hanging over us. As the decision settled in, I couldn't help but think back on everything that had led us to this moment. Vanessa's betrayal, the years of silence, the lies, and the pain. But I also thought about the boys, about how much they had grown, about how far we had come. It was almost as if, after everything, we could finally breathe. And yet, there was one more thing hanging over us. An event from Vanessa's past was revealed during the trial, something that shed light on why she had been so distant. It wasn't just that she had run away. It was that she had been running from her own demons, from a past she hadn't been able to escape. It was something I hadn't known until the trial. Vanessa had been involved in a series of financial issues, a web of bad decisions, and debts that had followed her wherever she went. It was as if she had used her children as a way to get what she wanted, as if they were just another asset in a life she could never quite control. I thought back to the times when she had been with us, when things had seemed normal. But even then, there had always been a sense of unease. Something about her never seemed quite right. Now, seeing everything laid out in front of me, it all made sense. But even with the revelation of her past, I knew that it didn't change anything. The boys had made their choice. And no matter what came to light, nothing would ever erase the love we had built together. Vanessa's past didn't matter anymore. What mattered was the future we were building. A future where the boys were safe, loved, and cared for. Not by someone who had abandoned them, but by someone who had always been there.
Despite everything, Vanessa still tried. She wasn't giving up, not yet. This time, it wasn't through the courts or her lawyer. It was a last-ditch attempt, one that caught me by surprise. One afternoon, after a few months of peace, Vanessa reached out to the boys directly. She messaged them, telling them that she was ready to make things right. She spoke of a new life, of new opportunities, of a future where they could all start fresh. She offered them something she never had before, the chance to rebuild a relationship, to come together as a family. The message felt like a slap in the face, not because it was unexpected, but because it was so hollow. It felt empty, like a plea for redemption that didn't come from a place of love, but from desperation. She was no longer asking for a chance as a mother. She was asking for a second chance to get what she had lost. Not the boys, but the financial security she thought she could get from them. Ethan, as always, was the first to speak when they showed me the message. He looked at me, his brow furrowed, as if he was waiting for some kind of reassurance. "Do you think we should reply, Grandma?" he asked, his voice cautious, unsure. I looked at him, at Lucas and Noah, who were both watching me closely, as if waiting for me to tell them what to do. But this was their decision. They had already made it. "No," I said firmly. "You don't owe her anything. She made her choices, and now it's your turn to make yours." The boys nodded, but I could see the confusion in their eyes. They didn't want to hurt anyone, but they also didn't want to be taken advantage of again. I couldn't blame them for feeling conflicted. It wasn't easy to face a mother who had abandoned you, even if you knew you were better off without her. Later that night, after everything had settled, I sat with them and we talked. We talked about what it meant to forgive, about the difference between forgiveness and allowing someone to hurt you again. And I made sure they knew one thing above all else. Forgiveness doesn't mean letting people back into your life. It means finding peace in your heart, knowing you don't have to carry the weight of their mistakes anymore.
The boys were put to the test, not by anyone in the courtroom, but by life itself. They had been through so much, and now they had to decide what kind of people they would be, who they wanted to be in a world that had tried to tear them apart. They were growing into young men, and the choices they made would shape their futures. I watched them closely, not as a judge, but as someone who had watched them grow, who had nurtured them into the strong, thoughtful individuals they were becoming. One evening, we sat together, talking about what had happened and what it all meant. It wasn't an easy conversation, but it was a necessary one. They needed to know that they could be strong without being cold, that they could be kind without being naive. "Grandma," Lucas said, breaking the silence, "how do you forgive someone like her?" I looked at him, seeing the weight of his question in his eyes. This was the real test, not whether they could forgive Vanessa, but whether they could understand what true strength was. I replied, my voice calm but heavy with the wisdom of experience. "It's not about forgiving her. It's about understanding that her actions don't define you. You don't have to carry the burden of her mistakes. You don't have to let her absence, her choices shape who you become. You get to decide who you are, and that's the most powerful thing you can do." Noah, always the quiet one, nodded slowly, his eyes thoughtful. "I get it. It's about letting go, but not for her, for us." Exactly, I thought. It wasn't about giving Vanessa what she wanted. It was about giving the boys the freedom to build the lives they deserved, free from the weight of her mistakes. The conversation ended with a sense of calm that hadn't been there before. They understood. They were ready to move on, to live their lives on their own terms, without the shadows of their past hanging over them. Vanessa wasn't done. She couldn't let go of the idea that she could still somehow control everything, including the boys' future. After the court ruling, after everything that had been said, she tried one last time. This time, it wasn't a plea for reconciliation. It wasn't a request for forgiveness. It was a final, desperate attempt to pull them back into her world. She offered them a life of luxury, something she believed they would be drawn to. She spoke about the house in Seattle, the one she had been showing them pictures of. A house with a pool, spacious rooms, a place they could call their own. She offered them the world they had always dreamed of, or at least the world she thought they wanted. "We could make it work," she said. "We could have everything. I'll make sure you get the best education, the best future. I can give you everything you've ever wanted. I can give you the stability that you deserve." But I knew the boys were no longer interested in what she had to offer. They had already made their decision, and it wasn't about the material things Vanessa could provide. It was about the love and stability they had found with me. "You can't buy us, Mom," Ethan said firmly, his voice steady, almost too steady for his age. "You can't buy our love, and we don't want anything from you if it means going back to the way things were." Lucas and Noah nodded in agreement, their faces resolute. They were no longer children who needed to be protected from the truth.
They had faced it, and they had made their choice. They didn't want anything from her, not even the promises of a better life. They didn't need a big house or fancy things. They needed love, stability, and the security of a family that had always been there for them. Vanessa, defeated, finally understood. The boys weren't the same children she had left behind. They had grown, they had learned, and they had chosen their path. They had chosen me. As I sat there, watching the boys grow into young men, I realized that the greatest gift I had given them was the one they would never fully understand until they had children of their own. I had given them love, stability, and a sense of security that no amount of money or luxury could ever provide. I had been their mother when they had none, their protector when they had nothing to rely on but the hope that one day their real mother would come back. I had given up everything for them, my own dreams, my own peace, my own comfort. There were times when I wondered if I would ever get those things back. But looking at them now, I realized it didn't matter. They had become strong, compassionate young men. They had learned the true meaning of family, of love, of sacrifice. And that was all that mattered. And then there was Vanessa. She had been so focused on what she had lost, on the material things, on the control she had once had. But in the end, she had lost everything that truly mattered. She had lost the love of her children, the trust they once had in her. She had lost the chance to be a mother to them, to guide them through life, to see them grow. And she would never get that back. The truth was, Vanessa had never understood the weight of sacrifice, the depth of what it meant to be a mother. She thought she could buy it. She thought that money could fix everything. But she was wrong. And in her quest for what she thought was her due, she had lost the only thing that mattered, the love of her children. I had sacrificed everything for them, but in the end, what I had gained was worth more than anything I could have imagined. I had their love, their respect, and their trust. And that, I realized, was the only inheritance I needed. Vanessa couldn't accept defeat. Even after all the legal battles, after the boys had made their decision, she didn't stop fighting. She was like a cornered animal, desperate to reclaim what she thought was hers. This time, she came with more force, more determination, and more lies. She tried to manipulate the situation once again, this time accusing me of turning the boys against her. She claimed that I had brainwashed them, that I had convinced them to hate her. She tried to paint me as the villain in the story, as the one who had torn apart a family for my own gain. But I knew better. I had seen this before. I had seen how she could twist the truth to suit her needs, how she could manipulate anyone who was willing to listen. But she wasn't going to get away with it this time. The boys saw through it all. They knew the truth. They knew what she had done, what she had taken from them, and they weren't gonna let her turn the story around. They were stronger now, more mature, and they were done with her lies. Ethan, as usual, was the one to speak up. "We're not going anywhere," he said firmly, his voice unwavering. "We're staying with Grandma. We don't need her, not anymore. We don't need her lies." Lucas and Noah stood beside him, their faces set with determination. They were done. They had made their decision, and no one, Not even their mother could change that. Vanessa tried to argue, but she knew it was over. She had lost. She had already lost their trust, their love, and now she had lost her last chance to manipulate the situation. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of everything lift off my shoulders. The battle was over, and we had won.
It wasn't just the lies that had torn this family apart. It wasn't just the absence of a mother, the abandonment, or the manipulation. In the end, it all came down to one thing: money. Vanessa had always been obsessed with it, and that obsession had driven every decision she made. It wasn't just about the boys. It was about what they represented, what they could give her. The inheritance, the life insurance policy George had left behind for the boys. It was a substantial amount of money, enough to change lives, enough to secure their future. But Vanessa had always seen it as hers, something she was entitled to. And when she saw the boys getting closer to the age when they would receive it, she came back, hoping to reclaim what she thought was hers. I had always known that this was part of her plan. She didn't care about them. She didn't care about being a mother. She cared about the money. That's why she had stayed away for so long. It wasn't because she couldn't handle motherhood. It was because she couldn't handle the responsibility. She wanted freedom, a life without ties, without the burden of raising children. And when she saw an opportunity to take what she thought was rightfully hers, she came back, pretending to be the loving mother. But I had already made sure that the money would go where it belonged, to the boys. I had taken the necessary steps to protect them, to ensure that no one could take what was rightfully theirs. The insurance money wasn't going to Vanessa. It was going to them. It was theirs, and no one could take it from them. I sat down with the boys one evening, after everything had settled, and explained it to them. I didn't want them to be left with any doubts, any questions about what had really happened. They needed to know the truth. "Your mother wanted the money," I said, my voice steady, but filled with the weight of the reality. "That's why she came back. She thought that if she could take you from me, she would get access to the inheritance. She thought she could manipulate you, make you believe that she was your mother again, just so she could get what she wanted." The boys listened in silence, their faces serious. They had known, on some level, that this was part of the reason Vanessa had come back. But hearing it out loud, hearing the truth from me, made it real. "We're not going to let her do that to us," Ethan said quietly, his voice filled with resolve. "She doesn't get to take everything we've built together." "No, she doesn't," I agreed, my heart swelling with pride, "and I'll make sure she never does." The battle for custody had been intense, but now the fight for their futures had changed shape. The real test was no longer in the courtroom. It was in the quiet moments, in the spaces where the truth and trust would be tested. The boys, now more mature and wiser than ever, had to decide how to move forward. They were nearing adulthood, and the choices they made now would define who they were going to be. The fight wasn't just for the inheritance anymore, or for custody. It was about loyalty. Loyalty to the family that had never abandoned them, loyalty to the one who had raised them when no one else would. It was about realizing that family wasn't just about blood. It was about the people who stand by you, the ones who love you unconditionally, no matter the circumstances. One evening, as we sat around the table, the conversation turned serious. Ethan, always the one who spoke up first, looked at me with a question in his eyes. "Grandma," he began, "what happens to her now? What does she get out of all of this?" I looked at him, knowing what he was asking. He wasn't just asking about Vanessa. He was asking about the future, about the consequences of everything that had happened. He was asking what loyalty meant in a world that had shown him betrayal. "She doesn't get to take anything from us," I said firmly. "Not the boys, not the money, not even our peace of mind. She made her choices. We've made ours." Lucas nodded. "She never really cared about us anyway. She was just after the money. We've been through too much to let her back in." Noah was quiet, as usual, but I could see the resolve in his eyes. "We've learned what matters, Grandma. It's not what we have, it's who we have. And we have you. That's all we need." The boys had learned, perhaps earlier than most, that loyalty isn't a simple thing. It's not about how long you've known someone or how much blood ties you together. Loyalty is about being there, being present, and doing the hard work of loving someone day after day, year after year. And they had chosen loyalty. They had chosen me.
The final chapter had been written. There would be no more court hearings, no more legal battles. Vanessa had lost. The boys had made their choice, and in the end, it was clear that family was built not on promises or blood, but on presence, sacrifice, and unwavering love. We were finally free to move on. The weight of everything that had happened, the years of uncertainty and pain had lifted. We were stronger, closer, and more united than we had ever been. The boys were growing into fine young men, and I was proud of the people they were becoming. Vanessa had made her choice long ago, and now she had to live with it. The money she had hoped to claim would never come to her. The boys, now adults, had made sure of that. They didn't need her money. They didn't need her approval. What they needed was to know that they were loved, and they had that in abundance. And me? I had my family. The family I had fought for, the family I had sacrificed for, and nothing, not even Vanessa's manipulations, could take that away. The house was quieter now, but in a good way. There were no more arguments, no more tension, just laughter, just warmth, just us. The boys were preparing for their futures, getting ready to spread their wings, but they always came back to me, and I knew deep down that they would never forget the lessons we had learned together. One day, as I sat in the living room reading a book, I received a text from Ethan. "Grandma," the message said, "we bought a house. We made an offer and it's in your name. We're getting a place where we can all be together. You've always been there for us, and now we want to be there for you." I couldn't help but cry. It wasn't the house, the offer, or even the thought of having a new place. It was the gesture. It was the fact that my boys, the ones I had raised with so much love, were now returning that love in the most beautiful way they could. The house was a symbol, but it was also a promise that we would continue to be there for each other, no matter what. And as I sat there in the home that had seen so many struggles, so many tears, I knew one thing for sure. I had won. Not because of the court ruling, not because of the money, but because in the end I had the family I had always dreamed of, and that was worth more than anything in the world.
And now, looking at everything that happened, I wonder, what really defines a mother? Is it blood? Or is it the love we offer day after day with open arms, even when life turns its back on us? The truth is that our greatest struggle is not against others, but against what is inside of us. Loyalty, love, sacrifice. This is what builds a real family. And I saw that in my grandchildren, in the boys I chose to love as sons. No matter what happens, no matter what the world tries to take from us, love will always prevail. I invite you, my friend, to reflect on what you would do if you were in my place. What decisions would you make for those you love? And if you've stayed until here, it's because something in this story touched your heart. So tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to comment with your city and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories. We have a special giveaway at the end of the month, and who knows, maybe you'll win a gift filled with affection. Make sure to follow the channel because we still have so much to share and reflect on together. And remember, the true strength lies in the unconditional love we give to others. That's the greatest lesson life has given me. Until next time.